Thanks to Gossipgeist and Commonwealth Realm, the possibility of the depths being a vastly changed version of the original Hyrule before it was submerged by the Great Sea is all but confirmed. Gossipgeist's videos, Hyrule's Deepest Secrets Finally Unearthed, and The Source of Hyrule's Suffering also shed light on a couple of other mysteries as well. One, the fossilized tree roots. I couldn't decide on whether they were coral branches or dead tree roots, but these videos finally confirmed that they are most likely dead tree roots. In Wind Waker, during the era of the Great Sea, the Koroks would plant seeds produced by the baby Deku tree all across the Great Sea in order to create new islands in the hopes that these islands would one day connect, creating whole new land masses altogether. And it looks like they succeeded, with the surface map in the era of the wild being one of the fruits of those labors. A byproduct of that effort, though, was the complete abandonment of old Hyrule, forgotten underneath the new layer of earth built on top of it, which means that the roots in the depths aren't protruding upwards from the floor, but down from the ceiling. These roots can be found protruding from the ceiling near the opening of every chasm, as well as from a couple of other random spots too. Their presence across the entirety of the depths supports the theory that they were in fact born long ago from the combined efforts of the Koroks and the baby Deku tree. These roots potentially drew life energy, not just from the ocean, but from the very Hyrule they were meant to replace. I agree with this theory wholeheartedly. I also agree with Gossipgeist's theory that the light roots actually serve as a prison for the demons that once roamed the depths freely, but were later defeated and imprisoned by Rauru and Sonia during their pilgrimage of light. I'd actually like to double down on this theory that the pilgrimage of light occurred in the depths, by pointing to something else that potentially confirms it: the light root trails. These trails are easy to spot thanks to their light brownish color, the fact that they lead from one light root to another. There's more to say about them that I'll save for the next video, but basically, it's all but confirmed that Gossipgeist is right. The pilgrimage of light occurred in the depths, and it's very, very likely that the monsters slayed during this pilgrimage were imprisoned in the light roots themselves, the light roots we see in the depths today. Gossipgeist goes a step further though, theorizing that the trees seen in Gloom's origin also served as a sort of light root itself, a light root that imprisoned Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf after the events of that game. While I don't completely disagree with that notion, I do want to provide an alternative theory regarding the purpose and origin of said tree. But first, I must clarify that my history with the Zelda franchise is spotty at best, only having played Twilight Princess and A Link Between Worlds beforehand. It wasn't until Breath of the Wild that I finally fell in love with the franchise, so I never thought much about which timeline Breath of the Wild fit into best until Tears of the Kingdom. I've always been aware of Ganondorf, but I never truly understood just how monumental it was to see him again in the flesh, especially at this point in the timeline. So I started watching lore videos in an attempt to learn as much as I could about the series as a whole, in order to understand how the era of the Wild fit into it all, which leads to Gossipgeist's videos and the revelation that Breath of the Wild isn't a series reboot. It is instead a true chronological successor to previous entries, and indeed does take place at the end of the timeline, the adult timeline, which I now know includes the Wind Waker, a game that saw several monumental events happen: the return of Ocarina's Ganondorf, the death of Old Hyrule, and the most surprising to me, the disappearance of the Master Sword. The same Master Sword seen in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Gossipgeist and Commonwealth Realm make this clear in their video, Hyrule's Deepest Secrets Finally Unearthed, where they come to the conclusion that the reason Rauru and Sonia are unaware of the Master Sword is because its existence has been forgotten, lost at sea centuries before they ever set foot on the surface. A sea that itself has been forgotten, buried under layers of newly formed earth. The Master Sword couldn't be found in Hyrule, because it wasn't in Hyrule anymore. It was in Old Hyrule, aka the depths. Which leads back to the tree at Gloom's origin. Even though Zelda showed Minoru the very sword they should be looking for, by the time she transformed into a dragon, they hadn't found it yet. In fact, there's no mention of the sword's original whereabouts by the sages either, meaning that it was likely found sometime after their demise. And since the Zonai language hasn't been fully translated yet, we can't glean any evidence from any of the Zonai texts seen throughout Hyrule and Tears of the Kingdom. But we might finally get confirmation as to who rediscovered the Master Sword in the Era of the Wilds in the upcoming art book, Masterworks 2. But thanks to all the lore videos I've watched, I have a guess as to where it's been since it was last seen in the Wind Waker. And my guess hinges entirely on this platform. The very platform where we face off against Ganondorf in the final battle. You see, easy to assume that the Gloom tree Ganondorf is resting inside of is a tree of his own creation. But I don't think it is. It's true that its roots glow with the same blood red color of the gloom that flows through it, and touching them results in Link's life energy being sapped away. But it's still a tree made of wood. If you shoot an arrow at any of its roots, the arrow will make the same sound an arrow makes when hitting a regular tree trunk, and will stick into the root just as it would when shot into a normal tree. And if you throw a bright bloom seed on one, you'll see more than just a demonic red color, but also specks of brown, which of course is a common color associated with trees in our world and this one. So it's clear that it possesses the properties of a normal tree, which is strange, considering where it's located and its current purpose. While trees aren't an uncommon sight in the depths, none of them look like this one. Not only that, but given where the tree is located, it shouldn't exist. There's no sunlight here, and no soil for it to draw nutrients from. It is situated on and growing out of solid stone. But how? The obvious answer would be Ganondorf. We see in Zelda's memories that he possesses a well of energy unmatched by most, made material via the power of his secret stone, resulting in a figure that could bring the kingdom's very best to their knees. So naturally, generating something like a life-sucking tree should be within his power. But that's not the issue I have with this theory. The problem I have with the idea of Ganondorf being the creator of this tree is that he shows complete disdain for nature itself. He being the catalyst for the upheaval proves this. The polluted waters of Zora's domain, the poisoning of the Goron's food supply, the extreme climate shifts at Rito Village in the Gerudo Highlands, and the sand shroud in the Gerudo Desert. Disruptions to nature that prove dangerous for the people of Hyrule, to the point where some view the upheaval as the end of the world. The idea that someone willing to hurt nature in this manner could manifest a tree, a symbol synonymous with nature, just doesn't seem right to me. So if Ganondorf didn't create this tree, then who did? According to Gossipgeist, it would have to have been the sages from Ocarina of Time. As a giant light root, it would have performed the same function as the other light roots in the depths, serving as a prison for the demon contained inside. And this theory works, but not with mine. Like Gossipgeist, I agree that Gloom's lair once served as a sealing point for the original Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time. But I also think this location doubled as something else, as the resting place for Ganondorf in the Wind Waker. Let's review the events of those two games. At the end of Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf is defeated, but not killed. He is instead sealed in the Evil Realm, which Wind Waker confirms is somewhere underground, which is why when Ganondorf breaks the seal and returns, he re-emerges from the depths of the earth. So we know that the Evil Realm is a real place underneath the surface, but what Wind Waker doesn't tell us is where exactly Ganondorf emerged from. There is one location that is likelier than most: Ganon's Tower, the place where the final battle in the Wind Waker takes place. A place with a very distinctive rooftop bearing a spiral pattern in the center of it, just like the spiral pattern seen here, in this room where we fight Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom. Now it's not a 1-to-1 match, but the resemblance is uncanny. The main difference being that the spiral in Tears of the Kingdom isn't a design made with stonework, but instead made with brown tree roots. Brown tree roots that don't damage Link when he touches them. These aren't the only brown tree roots that aren't afflicted by gloom. Normal, totally safe tree roots can be seen on the platform just outside of Ganondorf's chamber. They coat the entirety of the platform and even extend past it, curling around the rim of the arena. Now, if Ganondorf created this tree made of gloom, why wouldn't the entirety of it be dangerous? Why wouldn't the entirety of it serve its purpose of draining life force from everything that touches it? Because he didn't create it, he just appropriated it, possessed it for his own purposes. The tree was already here when he arrived, and he was able to reach it because someone else had reached it before he did. We can see proof of that here. The platform that Link jumps off of to enter Gloom's lair is not an unnatural one. It's Zonai in design and form, with a man-made trail that leads right to it. Gloom's origin was a place of interest well before the events of the upheaval, because this tree served as a strange landmark for two reasons. One, the fact that it existed at all, and two, because within it, embedded in a pedestal made of stone, was the Master Sword. How could this possibility have played out? Ganondorf gets sealed in the evil realm after his defeat in Ocarina of Time. The seal weakens over time, allowing Ganondorf to leave the depths he was once captive in. This involves the lifting of a massive column containing Ganondorf and a slew of monsters, ready to take over the surface. This column would become known as Ganon's Tower. After a long journey, Link and Zelda face off against Ganondorf at the top of Ganon's Tower, defeating him in the process. King Daphnes, with the power of the Triforce, not only washes away the old kingdom of Hyrule, but has Ganon's Tower sent back into the depths from whence it came, which would explain why Ganon's Tower is so much further down in the depths than old Hyrule is, because it's in the place widely considered to be the evil realm. So while that would explain the existence of the Master Sword in Gloom's origin, it doesn't really explain the existence of the tree. To explore how it potentially came to be, we have to take a look at the history of other massive trees in the Zelda universe, which is something Zeltig did recently in his video, What is the Great Deku Tree? In that video, Zeltig resurfaced an interesting bit of knowledge from creating a champion that might provide the answer. In creating a champion, Manabu Takehara states that, perhaps by design of the goddess, beside the pedestal, a single young cherry tree grew. The young tree bathed in the energy flowing through the land, and, after an eternity had passed, became the guardian of the blade. It's obvious that the Gloom tree isn't an official Deku tree, lacking the sentience and warmth that defines them. But one thing stands out in that statement: the possibility that the Master Sword could birth a being like the Deku tree, albeit with the aid of the land and the abundant energy it provides. Something Gloom's lair is sorely lacking in. It's an empty void, in the evil realm no less. So, how? How could the Master Sword help facilitate the birth of a tree in a place completely unequipped to sustain life? Because of him, King Daphnes. Some debate whether King Daphnes was even alive during the events of the Wind Waker, instead taking the form of a spirit to aid Link and Zelda on their journey. Unfortunately, I don't have any decisive evidence supporting either theory, so there are only two possibilities. One, that he was either a living flesh and blood being when he touched the Triforce, or two, that he wasn't. This theory regarding the Gloom tree assumes that he was alive, and he died where he stood when we last saw him, atop of Ganon's tower, next to the now petrified Ganondorf, and the Master Sword embedded in him. When the human body dies, it decomposes, turning into compost. In a world of fantasy and magic like this one, the argument over whether one human's remains could be enough to birth a tree sapling is an argument only the creator of said world can truly know the answer to, which we may receive in the soon-to-be-released Masterworks 2. Hopefully, we get an answer to the origin of the Gloom tree, as well as the many, many other mysteries and questions raised by Tears of the Kingdom. And I really do hope that Gossip Geist and Commonwealth Realm are right about the potential ties between Tears of the Kingdom and the Wind Waker. It would add so much more to the experience and to the legacy of King Daphnes and the original Ganondorf. Big shout out to all the Zelda lore tubers out there for all the interesting and entertaining content they put out over the years for fellow fans to enjoy. And the biggest shout outs to Gossip Geist, Commonwealth Realm, and Zeltic for providing the bulk of the evidence and inspiration for this theory, if you can even call it that. I just figured that it would be a bit unceremonious for the Master Sword to be hidden in some random spot in the depths, behind some Zonite.